Hello, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for joining me here today on Narcissism 101, Cracking the Code with me, Paul Wisdom. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Happy 2026, by the way. Hope everybody is having a good new year so far. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed your holiday. And we're going to get into what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into what we're going to talk about today, as usual, if you want a one-on-one session, please feel free to email me at paul.wisdom_03@hotmail.com, or you can send a text message to 647-406-3057. If you want to talk, if you want to vent, if you need some more advice about your situation, perhaps you're trying to figure out if you're dealing with a narcissist or not, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to give you the help that you need, and then we can move forward from there. All right, so what we are going to talk about today, guys, is abuse isn't always out loud. Sometimes it's, and we're gonna get into all that today. So abuse isn't always out loud, and this is one of the things that many people, especially when you're explaining your experience to people, that is your narcissistic experience to people. Many people are confused by it. Many people many times don't understand what you're talking about because they think that when you talk about abuse, they think in their minds that of immediately like physical, it was out loud or something like that, right? But the truth is that abuse, it's not always out loud. Sometimes abuse, it's insidious. Insidious meaning that it happens very slowly, and it happens when nobody else is looking. It happens when you're in your house, when you're in your own house and you don't have a voice in your own house, where you're being shouted at for, saying this or that, or you're not being treated properly. Meaning, if you have if you have something, that's bothering you, and you're explaining it to the person who turned out to be a narcissist in your life, and they're invalidating you, they're ignoring you, they're giving you the silent treatment, they're making you feel less than, right? That's abuse as well, right? It's not always out loud. It's not always somebody, beating up someone, abusing them, right? That's not always the case. Although it's part of it. It's a big part of abuse, right? Because it's something that we all think about when it comes to abuse. It's what immediately comes into our minds. We think someone got beat up, they were being abused or something like that. But the truth is, especially when it comes down to narcissistic abuse, this is an abuse that happens over time. It's almost like a virus that once it touches you, that very slowly it chips away at you, every part of you. Your health starts you start to lose your health. You start to get serious health problems. Maybe you have problems with your eyesight. Maybe you experience hearing loss. Maybe you start getting massive headaches. Maybe you start having panic attacks, right? Maybe you start not doing things that you used to do, whether it was, maybe going to the gym. Maybe it was drawing. Maybe you're an artist of some sort. Maybe it was some sort of sport that you loved or something like that. You stop doing those things because over time your body is taking a hit, and that's because of the narcissist, right? It's not because they physically put their hands on you, but it's because of their presence, right? Their energy. It's part of the spiritual exchange going on between the two of you, right? And so that's why many times, and that's why I said abuse isn't always out loud. Sometimes sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's spiritual, sometimes it's mental. A lot of times it's physical, depending if you're dealing with a malignant narcissist, right? But you have to understand, guys, and especially people who, if this is your first video you are watching, thank you so much for joining me here on my channel today. What you have to understand is that narcissistic abuse, guys, it's a very dangerous type of abuse, just because many times people won't know what's happening to you because they themselves have not gone through it themselves, right? Or maybe they have gone through it, but they just don't know. They just didn't figure it out the way that you are figuring it out, right? And so when it comes down to narcissistic abuse, guys, it's not always out loud, it's not always physical, it's not always what you think. And that's why and that's why I've come to the realization, I understand now, that we can't always assume stuff about people, right? So when somebody is telling you about their experience And narcissists are becoming more and more, they're changing the way that they approach people, because narcissists, they come in many different shapes and sizes, but they all do the same playbook. They all play by the devil's playbook, which is love bomb stage, devaluation stage, discard stage. You guys should all know what these mean by now, because I mentioned it in most of my videos. But these are all the stages that narcissists take people through, right? Now, when it comes down to narcissists, guys, and many people keep saying this, and I completely and I'm indifferent to it. People say that narcissists, when it comes down to how they abuse people, that narcissism is on a spectrum, and I don't agree with that at all, because when you think of a spectrum, you think of something that that measures, right? A spectrum, it's measured, right? But when it comes to narcissism abuse, guys, what you have to understand is that all narcissists play by the same exact playbook. They all do the same things, right? But they just do it to different people depending on what those people provide for them. So, for example, with my ex-wife, for example, being a covert narcissist, if somebody else gets involved with her, unfortunately, they're gonna get it worse than I did. And the second thing is that she's gonna do the same exact thing to them that she did to me. The only difference is that it's gonna be at a much faster rate, because you have to remember that narcissists, with each and every person that they get in contact with, they get worse and worse and worse and worse, and they get more and more impatient, right? And when you're more impatient with something, when you're more impatient, then your skills with that get to be sloppy, right? Because now you're impatient, you just don't give a crap, right? You don't care, right? And so you just do whatever it is, right? And so she's going to do the same exact thing to that person. It's just going to be in a different way, in a different time zone. And it depends on what that person provides for them, right? Maybe that person is a sounding board for them. That person just sits there and listens to them talk and lets the narcissist dump their toxicity into them, right? Maybe that person has a lot of money. Maybe that person is very attractive. Maybe that person has something that the narcissist wants, and that they can get the narcissist into something, whether that's into a club, whether that's into something that the narcissist has ever wanted, right? Maybe that person is just somebody that the narcissist is dealing with for a time. But you have to understand again that narcissists, they all do the same playbook. It's just in different ways to different people, right? And so what you have to understand is that, again, with each and every person that the narcissist encounters, the narcissist treats them much worse, right? Because you have to remember, narcissists, they're possessed with demons as well. They have a lot of demons running through their minds 24/7, and those demons are telling them what to say and what to do to different people in different time zones, right? And so what we're saying here is that the abuse that they dish out, though, it's not always out loud, right? That it's behind closed doors many times, and many times you wouldn't even know, especially because the narcissists, they do such a good job playing the victim, especially the female covert narcissist. If you didn't watch my video yet on who's more dangerous, the female narcissist or the male narcissist, I really encourage you guys go watch that video, especially if you're new to my channel. But anyways, especially the female covert narcissists. Female covert narcissists are really good at playing the victim, right? And so because they're so good at playing the victim, they're good at convincing the world and other people that they were not the problem, but that the person that they're dealing with is the problem, when really that's all a lie, right? Because narcissists know how to lie. They are professional pathological liars. They lie about everything. They even lie about things that don't even require you to lie about, right? And so when it comes down to it, guys, you have to understand, and you have to use your discernment. You have to be smart. That's why we say don't just assume things, right? Get to know people for who they are, right? When people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Now, I'm not trying to say that when somebody's telling you about something that you just dismiss what they're saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is listen to both sides of the story intently, right? Don't just take one side, one person's story, and just think that, yeah, this person must be right, unless there's a caveat here, and pay attention to this. Unless you yourself have been through the narcissistic experience, and that person that's talking to you when they talk to you, it's like everything is going the way that the narcissistic cycle goes. So if they're saying that, at one point my narcissistic husband or wife was so nice to me, everything was amazing, but then all of a sudden, just like that, they switched up on me, they changed, they started disrespecting me, they started invalidating me, not spending time with me, stop having sex with me all of a sudden, and then out of nowhere, months later, I just said could you show a little more respect? And then boom, they were gone. They just left, right? So if they're explaining it like that, and you've been through the experience, then okay, this person's a victim in this situation. But if you've never been through the experience, right, and yet you're believing only one side of the story, then what you're doing there is you're not being very smart, because what you don't know is that person that's telling the story, they could very well be the problem. Right? Or the person who's telling the story may not be the problem. So what I'm saying here, guys, is abuse it's not always out loud, right? You gotta look at it from all angles. And like I was saying before, and I didn't get to touch on this yet, but I'll touch on it now. What I was saying before is that you also have to be smart, because narcissists, they're starting to change things up a little bit. So what they do is that they say to people, I've been through the cycle and everything like that. But then that person that says they've been through the cycle, that person could very well be a narcissist too, right? So that's why you have to have gone through the cycle. You have to understand, you have to know, you have to use your, discernment to see, whether this person has been through it or whether they're just a liar, whether they're a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And so that's why when it comes down to the abuse, guys, you have to pay very careful attention. You can't just assume, you can't just go around assuming, right? And so, when it comes down to it, guys, abuse, it's not always out loud. It's not always physical. It's not always someone screaming and yelling and being verbally abusive to someone. Many times it's behind closed doors. That person is starting the narcissistic person is starting intentional arguments out of nowhere. They're bringing stuff up from the past, or they're bringing up stuff that their partner or the person they're doing with is sensitive about. And then that person blows up. And then the narcissist just sits back and watches them, scream and yell and do all that. And then the narcissist is smirking at them like that. I can't do the smirk because I'm not a narcissist. But when you see that smirk, that evil smirk, what they're essentially saying is that they have control over you, right? So be very, very careful when it comes down to that, right? Like if you're in public, let's say for example you're in public, you're just going about your day. And then you see two people arguing. You see one person, you see them both yelling and screaming at each other. Or you see one person yelling, and then the other person just keeps on walking ahead while that person is yelling. What do you think? What do you really think is going on there? Right? Many times you would think that the person who's yelling at them and the person who's walking away, you think that person's the crazy person. Many times you think that person's the person that's unstable or has issues. Right? And then the person that's walking away is the stable one. Well, how do you know that person that's walking away didn't just start the argument with them or was invalidating them and was making them feel, out of place, and then they didn't want to take accountability, and so they walk off, and then the other person's just yelling at them? Or it could be the opposite, right? Maybe that person who's yelling is a toxic person, and that person that's walking away, is trying to, just ignore them because they can't take it. So what I'm saying, guys, is in order to understand, the abuse, you have to look at both sides of the situation, especially, again, if you've never been through the cycle yourself. If you've never been through the narcissistic abusive cycle and you are following a person and you are listening to a person who and what you're doing is you're listening to the person who is a victim and is saying horrible things about, their spouse or whatever, then, what I'm saying is you have to look at both sides. Right. And you have to understand, why that person is saying what they're saying. And you have to think about, okay, is this person who's telling me this a genuine, authentic person? Is this person who they say that they are? This is why you have to do your reconnaissance, right? You have to be smart. So what I'm saying here, guys, is abuse. It's not always out loud. You know what I mean? It's not always out loud. Sometimes it's it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. Maybe that person is being abused with scripture. Maybe they're being maybe the narcissist is using scriptures to manipulate them, to get them back in line. If you're dealing with narcissistic parents and they always say that scripture, honor your father and mother, when you're trying to hold them accountable for something, then you know that you're doing that. Then you know that you probably have narcissistic parents if they can't even take accountability for the smallest things. Now, I'm not trying to say that if they don't own up to something that they're a narcissist. It's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that if it comes to a point where it's like a cycle where they repeat the same thing every time you try to have a conversation with them, they blow up at you or they walk away, right? Then you know that there's a problem there. Then you know that you could be dealing with the narcissist, because one thing all narcissists can't do is they can't take accountability for anything. They hate taking accountability because they know if they do, they know that they're going to be wrong, and narcissists can't be wrong about anything. They don't like knowing that somebody beat them to the punch or somebody knows something that they don't know. Because if that's the case, then that means that that means that they're losing their power, and they can't have that, right? That's why narcissists thrive off of chaos, confusion, and control. I've been saying that in most of my videos because it's very true. Because they believe that they can cause chaos in someone's life, whether it's through an intentional argument, whether it's through stonewalling them and walking off on them, whether it's through them, gaslighting them and making them doubt their reality so that they become codependent on them, right? If they can do all those things and cause chaos in that person's life, then they know that they can confuse that person, because after chaos is confusion, right? And narcissists know if they can confuse you and put you in the sunken place and put you in the fog and give you a brain fog where you can't think straight, you can't see straight and all that stuff, then they know that they have control over you, right? Because, and I've said this in many of my videos before, and I feel like it was copied, but anyways, what I was saying before was that narcissists, what they do is they start in your mind, right? They start by attacking your brain, right? They start by making you doubt yourself, right? And that's why their favorite abuse tactic is gaslighting, right? Because gaslighting, what it does is it causes cognitive dissonance, confusion in your brain, and then it puts you in a fog where you can't think straight, where you start forgetting things that you know that you know and that you wrote down, things that you know that are supposed to happen. You start forgetting things, right? And you know that you don't forget things, right? And me personally, I'm not a person who forgets things either. That's why I can tell you about my whole narcissistic experience with my ex-wife from the start all the way to the finish, right? And she probably can't even remember my name or anything like that. But anyway, what I'm saying here, guys, is that when it comes down to it, abuse isn't always loud. Narcissistic abuse isn't always out loud. It's not always yelling and screaming in public. It's not always physically abusing. Many times it's insidious, right? And many times, and narcissists, they're very sneaky in how they do things. They're very calculated, and how everything that the narcissist does, there's a meaning behind it. Every word that comes out of their mouth, there's a reason behind it, right? And so what I'm saying, I'm not trying to say be paranoid when people are talking to you. Now, that's not what I'm trying to say. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. That's why I have to explain things this way, because I don't want people to get the wrong idea of thinking, oh, well, so-and-so's like that. I just met a person. If they're not, we're not talking about those people. We're talking about narcissistic people, right? So to know how to discern and how to figure these people out. Because what you have to also know, and I made a video on this some time ago, is that narcissists are everywhere. And it's true. They are literally everywhere, right? Everywhere you turn, there is somebody who's a narcissist these days, right? And the reason is because everybody's being exposed these days. Everybody is manifesting these days. There's a real spiritual warfare that is going on all around us. And it's happening everywhere and with everything, right? And so more and more people are becoming educated. More and more people are being taught about this. More and more people are not tolerating abuse any longer. More and more people are standing up for themselves and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be disrespected. I'm not going to be spoken to like that. I'm not going to be talked down to anymore. And I hit a point where I did that, right? Where in my marriage, I think it was the second year of my marriage, my ex-wife, she wasn't helping me. She wasn't helping cook. She wasn't helping clean. She wasn't contributing to the bills. She was just squandering away her money and all that stuff. And while I was paying from all my money in hopes that, in good faith that she was going to pay me back and help me out. But then I came to her one day. I was like, hey, babe, are you gonna you should start. I would appreciate if you start helping out, helping cook, helping clean, and do something. I would appreciate it. I'm not trying to tell you what to do because understand you're 4 years older than me. I would just appreciate if you help me out. And then after that, what had happened was that she started ghosting me. She started spending less time with me. We didn't have sex. We barely had sex anymore. And, all those things started happening. And I started to wonder, did I do something wrong? And I just put up a boundary. And then what I understand now is that narcissists, they don't like to take accountability. They don't like to know that somebody is catching on to them. And there were many times actually where she was getting the sense that I was catching on to her, right? And then that's why she started acting strange. She started, when she saw I was catching on, that's when she threw the love bomb in. She gave me a bit of the love bomb stage again, where she started saying, I love you so much, and you're gonna be okay. She started putting her hands all over my chest and all that, and bringing me to the room to make love and all that. What I'm saying is that was all to keep me in line, to control me, right? So that I didn't figure it out. Because when I did figure it out, when I did uncover and rip that mask off her face metaphorically and, call her out and say, hey, I think you have narcissistic personality disorder. And then she blew up, and then the devil's face, that's where I saw the devil's face, that's when I knew that, this marriage is probably over, because then she ghosted me for 5 days, and then the rest is history from there. But what I'm saying, guys, is that this is why it's really important that you don't just assume things, right? Don't think that just because your best friend, of 30-something years, comes and tells you, oh, this person is toxic and all that. They play the victim card and all that stuff. Don't think that it's all right. Get to know both sides of the story. Get down to what really happened. Use your discernment. Use your discernment. If somebody's telling you something and you feel like they're being truthfully honest with you, and you've tried them and you know them well enough, then you know that person's probably telling you the truth. But if this is a person that you don't know and they're just coming up and telling you stuff about this and that, especially if if it's a narcissist, what they will do, usually narcissists, when the relationship is over, and not just when the relationship is over, but all throughout, what they'll be doing is they'll be playing the victim, and they'll be saying that their partner or the person they're dealing with is a toxic person, that they're evil, they're a monster, they cheat on them, they do this, they do that. You have to ask yourself the question, how well do I know this person? And, why would they be going around to multiple people and going around telling them stuff about their marriage and about their spouse? That's another thing. Why are they going around to people and talking about their marriage when marriage is supposed to be a sacred thing between you and your spouse, and you and your spouse? Those are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself, right? Without jumping to conclusions and saying, hey, yeah, this person knows this person knows what they're talking about, and I believe this person over that person. Because you have to, because like I said, not everything is as it seems, right? Not everything is clear cut. That's why you have to use your discernment. You have to be smart, and you have to get to know people for yourself. Right? Once you get to know people for yourself and they show you their true colors, then you know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth, right? But then you also have to become educated and aware on what narcissism actually is, because narcissism is, it's spiritual warfare. That's what it is. Right? So yeah, I hope that this video helped you out, guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Narcissism 101 Cracking the Code with me, Paul Wisdom. If you want a one-on-one session again, please email me at paul.wisdom_03@hotmail.com, or you can send a text message to 647-406-3057. If you want to talk, if you want to vent, if you need some advice, if you're trying to figure out if you're dealing with a narcissist or not, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to give you the help. Please, if you want to call, just send a text to that number and just let me know that it's you and you want to talk about your experience. Again, if you just call me, I'm probably going to block and delete your number, just because I just don't respond to random numbers, because it could be anybody. And the world's a crazy world out there. You never know who that person is on the phone. So just do me a favor. Just send a text. Let me know it's you. Let me know your name. And then I can definitely get you the help that you need. All right? So thank you so much, guys. I hope that you guys have a great Friday. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.